Shri Radha Krishnaya Namo Namaha. At first, I offer my humble prayers in the lotus feet of Lord Shri Radha Krishna. I also extend warm greetings and respect to all of you. Today, from the scripture UDDHAV GITA, the last message of Lord Shri Krishna, we will be listening chapter 17, where Lord is instructing his dear friend and devotee UDDHAV ji about categories, their number, distinction between Purusha and Prakriti, life after death. The holy word from the scripture are as follows. Uddhav said, "How many are the categories enumerated by the sages? O Lord of the universe, O Lord, regarding this I hear that thou speakest of 28 divided into 9, 11, 5 and 3. Some speak of 26 and others speak of 25. Some speak of 7, some 9 or 6 or 4, and others 11. Some speak of 17 or 16, and some again 13. Thou shouldest tell me, O immortal one, the purpose which the sages have in view in thus differently enumerating them." The Lord said, "Howsoever the sages may speak, it is quite in order, for all the categories are included in every enumeration, and what is impossible for those who speak accepting my wonder-working Maya. It is not as you put it, but it is as I put it. This sort of fighting over the issue is due to my powers, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, which are so difficult to get rid of. O best of men, it is owing to their mutual interpenetration that the categories are enumerated in a relation of cause and effect, according to the view of a particular exponent. In the same category, be it cause or effect, all the other categories are seen to be included. Therefore, we accept as true the casual order and enumeration of the categories upheld by the different exponents, just as their mouth utters them. From there is a reason behind them all. Some hold, since a man, under the grip of beginninglessness, cannot realize his self unaided, the omniscient giver of knowledge must be a different being from him. On this point, others hold there is not the least difference between the soul and God. Therefore, it is futile to make a distinction between them, and knowledge is but an attribute of the Prakriti. The Prakriti is but the equilibrium of the gunas, which are Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, these leading respectively to the maintenance, origin and destruction of the world, belong to Prakriti and not to the Atman. Now, knowledge is said to be the outcome of Sattva, activity, of Rajas and ignorance, of Tamas. Time is no other than God, who causes the disturbance among the gunas, and tendency is identical with the cosmic prana. Purusha, Prakriti, Mahat, egoism, ether, air, fire, water and earth. These are the 9 categories enumerated by me. My friend, the ear, skin, eye, nose and palate are the 5 organs of knowledge. The tongue, hand, legs, etc. are the organs of action, and the mind is both. Sound, touch, taste, smell and color are the 5 sense objects. Motion, speech, excretion and manual art but the effects of the organs of action. In the projection etc. of this universe, the Prakriti, transformed into causes and effects, assumes through the gunas such as the Sattva etc. The component elements such as the Mahat etc. while being transformed are charged with power under the glance of the Purusha and supported by the Prakriti combine and form the universe. The view that the components are only 7 in number comprises the 5 elements such as ether etc. together with the jiva and the supreme self, which is the substratum of both subject and object. From these 7 proceed the body, the organs and the pranas. The view that there are 6 categories comprises the 5 elements and the supreme self, which makes up the 6th. The Supreme Self, being provided with the 5 elements which have emanated out of it, has made all this and entered into it. In the view limiting the categories to 4 only, fire, water and earth together with the Atman, from which they have sprung, are meant. It is from these that the origin of all effects has taken place. In the enumeration of 17 categories, the gross elements, the subtle elements, and the organs, 5 of each, together with the mind and the Atman, constitute these 17. Similarly, in the enumeration of 16 categories, the Atman itself is taken as the mind. The 5 elements, the 5 organs, the mind, and the two folds Atman, these make up the 13 categories. In the enumeration of 11 categories, this Atman, the 5 elements, and the 5 organs are taken into consideration, while the 8 causes and the Purusha makes up the 9 categories. Thus, the sages have made various enumerations of the categories. All of these, being reasonable, are opposite. What indeed is inappropriate for the learned? Uddhava said, O Krishna, though the Prakriti and the Purusha are mutually distinct by their very nature, yet their distinction is not perceived, as they are never found apart. The Atman verily is seen in the Prakriti, and likewise the Prakriti in the Atman. O lotus-eyed, omniscient Lord, thou shouldest dispel this great doubt in my heart, which with words skilled in reasoning. For it is from thee that people get illumination, and through thy power it is that they are robbed by it. Thou alone knowest the course of thy inscrutable power, and none else. The Lord said, O best of men, the Prakriti and the Purusha are entirely distinct entities. This projected universe is subject to modification, for it has sprung from a disturbance among the gunas. My friend, my inscrutable power consisting of the gunas creates through these gunas innumerable modification and ideas relating thereto. Even though subject to all sorts of modification, yet the universe is broadly speaking threefold. One pertaining to the body, another to the gods, and the third to the creatures. The eye, the form, and the solar rays penetrating the eyeball, these depend upon one another for their manifestation. But the sun which is in the sky exists independently, because the Atman is the primeval cause of these. It is distinct from them. By its self-effulgence, it is the illuminer of all those that help to manifest one another. Similarly, with reference to the skin, the ear, the eye, the tongue, the nose, the mind, etc. This modification due to God, who upsets the equilibrium of the gunas produced from the Mahat, which again has for its cause the Prakriti, is known as egoism. It is threefold, Vaikarika, Tamas, and Andriya, and is the cause of doubt characterized by ignorance. The dispute as to whether the Atman is or not hinges on a difference of views merely, and is due to the non-perception of the Atman. Even though it is baseless, it never ceases for men who are averse to me, their own self. Uddhava said, Tell me, O Lord, O Govinda, how men averse to thee obtain and give up through their own actions, bodies high and low. It is inscrutable for those who are addicted to the senses. Few are the men who know it in the world, the majority are deluded. The Lord said, The mind of man swayed by past work goes from one sphere to another, accompanied by the 5 organs. The Atman which is distinct from it follows it. The mind swayed by past work, as it dwells on sense objects experienced or heard of, flashes up with regard to those and sleeps over the past after this memory is lost. Being engrossed in a particular sense object, man no more recollects himself. This utter self-forgetfulness of man from any cause is verily his death. O generous one, the complete acceptance by a man of a particular sense object as himself is called his birth, as in the case of dream and imagination. In a similar way, he no more remembers the old dream and imagination. In the new experience, he considers his old self as just come into being. As a man creates phantom bodies in a dream, so this threefold division, which is the creation of mind, appears in the Atman, which becomes the cause of the division of interior and exterior. My friend, through the imperceptible march of time, creatures are being continually born and dying. By this is not observed because of its subtlety. As in the case of flames or streams or the fruits of a tree, even so are the conditions of age, etc., brought about by time. As in the case of flames, the idea and the statement that this is that very lamp, or in the case of stream, that this is that very water, are false. So also are the idea and the statement that this is that very man, with reference to men whose lives are vain. Neither is this man born nor does he die through the instrumentality of his own works. It is all a mistake. He is immortal. The case is analogous to that of fire which is manifested through the wood. Conception, embryo state, birth, childhood, boyhood, youth, middle age, decay, and death. These are the 9 states of the body. Owing to his attachment to the gunas, the jiva assumes these imaginary states high and low, belonging clearly to something else, and some under exceptional circumstances give them up. One's own birth and death may be inferred from those of one's son and father. The witness of things possessed of birth and death is not affected by either of them. He who sees the origin and death of a plant from its seed and final transformation, this observer is distinct from the plant. Similarly is the witness of the body distinct from it. The ignorant man, failing to rightly discriminate thus the Atman from the Prakriti, is deluded by the sense objects and goes from birth to death. Swayed by his past work, a man through his attachment to Sattva becomes a sage or a god under the influence of Rajas and Asura, or a man, and under the influence of Tamasa, a ghost or a beast. Just as a man watching a band of dancers or singers imitates them, so the Atman, even though without activity, is moved to imitate the attributes of the Buddhi. As trees reflected in moving water seem to be moving also, and as when the eyes whirl, the land also seems to be whirling. As imaginations and dream perceptions are unreal, so also, O Uddhava, is the relative existence of sense experience of the Atman. Even though the sense world is unreal, the relative existence of a man who dwells on sense objects is never at an end, as travel comes in dream. Therefore, O Uddhava, cease to experience the sense objects through the outgoing organs. Look upon the delusion of plurality as caused by the non-perception of the Atman. Even though scolded by the wicked or insulted, ridiculed, calumniated, beaten, bound, robbed by his living, or spat upon, or otherwise abominably treated by the ignorant, being thus variously shaken and placed in dire extremities, the man who desires his well-being should deliver himself by his own effort. Uddhava said, O best of teachers, kindly instruct me about this so that I may understand it. O self of the universe, this insult to oneself by the wicked I consider as most difficult to put up with even by the learned, excepting those who practice the religion taught by thee, or are equanimous and have taken refuge at thy feet, for nature is too strong for men. Thus concludes chapter 17 from the scripture UDDHAV Gita, the last message of Lord Shri Krishna. Thank you for listening. Shri Radha Krishnaya Namo Namaha.